What's up, YouTubers and plant lovers? It's Justin coming to you from the Big Blue Nation once again, and today I was going to talk to you about the Ponytail palm. Now, its scientific name is Beaucarnea recurvata. And I think many of you have always heard it as the common name, the ponytail palm, the elephant's foot tree, or the elephant's foot palm, or the bottle palm tree. But, like I said, Beaucarnea recurvata, it is a tree with kind of a mixed identity, and actually that is because it's not really a tree, and it's not really a palm either. It's more closely related to the agave, and it's actually kind of more like a succulent. So it's not technically a tree, but it gets the name ponytail palm from the single trunk and the leaves that kind of come out on top. And that's why they call it a palm. But the ponytail palm is one of 7 species in the genus Beaucarnea. This group of small trees is really native to Mexico, Belize, and Guatemala. And more specifically, it is kind of found in the semi-desert areas of like southeastern Mexico. So this is really why it's a really great indoor plant to have. In the spring and summer times, this guy needs to be outside in full direct sunlight. Can kind of range from either really full direct bright sunlight all day to kind of bright indirect sunlight also. And it would do pretty well in kind of really bright indirect light. And its love of heat and being from the desert area will also help the tree when you move it back inside in your hot, warm, humid house during the wintertime. Now I say humid, but I know a lot of houses aren't really humid in the wintertime. It's all just kind of a really bone dry heat. And this plant can survive in that. And that's really because it's got this kind of bulbous, huge kind of base trunk that it uses to kind of store a lot of water in it. And that helps the plant get through a long drought phase. I mean, the plant can really go a little over a month without having any water at all and be just fine. It stores it all up. Now, this is kind of similar to a goldfish in the sense that if you have it in a pot, a small pot, it really won't get much bigger. If you want your tree, your ponytail palm to kind of put on mass and height, you need to kind of give it a more substantial kind of growing area, a larger pot, for it to actually kind of put on more mass. If you keep it in the same size pot for a long time, it really won't put on a whole lot of mass, and it will pretty much just kind of stay small. Now, that being said, you do kind of need to remove it every once in a while and try and trim up the roots, and you can kind of trim up the dead, dying leaves on the plant as well. Now, I've had this guy for about 4 or 5 years now, and I've repotted him about once. Now I can tell that a lot of these leaves, the older ones specifically, are kind of turning brown and drying out. That's normal. You can take your pruning shears that have been sanitized and just kind of remove all this kind of dead growth that you see, and that really will help your plant out. Plus, it'll make it more aesthetically pleasing also. Now, in the ground in nature, these plants can grow up to about 30 feet tall, but in containers, they rarely ever exceed kind of 4 to 5, maybe 6 feet tall, depending on how well you take care of them. They are dioecious, meaning that only female ponytail palms produce seeds. So if you have a male, it won't produce any seeds, but they also do flower, and they can flower in containers and flower outside, but they are kind of really numerous and kind of small flowers that are anywhere from kind of a greenish to creamy kind of white and pinkish colors, and bees love them. So if you do see kind of little flowers kind of branching off, you're doing really well with this plant. So I would just kind of continue doing it, what you're doing, and taking care of it, because really plants don't flower unless they're being well taken care of and almost all their needs are being met. So to actually get one to flower would be a really good thing, and like I'm saying, the bees really do love these kind of flowers that the ponytail palm produce. So that being said, it's really good. Now, in mature trees also, they can get up to about 30 feet tall, but the leaves can reach about 6 foot and be up to about 1 inch wide. Now, to the naked eye, you can't really see. It does look like these leaves are kind of smooth, but if you go the opposite direction and kind of rub up on it, you can feel the jaggedness, and if you look under magnification, you can see a bunch of jagged kind of sharp teeth also. So be careful with that, because if you do brush up against it the wrong way, you can cut your skin and probably draw blood. So be cautious with that. The ASPCA has said this is a non-toxic plant. for cats, dogs, and horses. Now I say that because my outdoor cats and my indoor cat love this plant. I know you probably can't see, but on the back side right here there's some claw marks from where my outdoor cats have tried to sharpen their claws on it. So I've had to move it several times to kind of get it away from them. And every time I bring it inside, my indoor cat loves to chew on the leaves. I don't know if he thinks it's just like a cat toy or whatever, but the dangly kind of wavy motions, it draws him right to it, and he'll chew on the leaves forever. But as I was saying, it is non-toxic, so you don't have to worry about them dying from the ponytail palm. Now, with light, as I was saying earlier, you really want to have a really bright, direct kind of light. I've sat mine out on the back porch where it got about 5 to 6 hours of direct sunlight a day, and the tree was just fine. In nature, they don't really get a whole bunch of water, and when they do get water, it's more in the spring and the summer. And so when you do water these guys, I would water really deeply and really infrequently. Maybe once every 2 to 3 weeks. And make sure that a lot of water actually runs through the bottom and comes out the bottom. That way you know that all the roots are getting soaked also. Roots that have not been wet for quite some time, maybe a month or two, will begin to die out. And if a lot of it dies out, the plant will actually die. So when watering it, make sure you do not have a tray underneath it. Let the excess water kind of run off freely, because these guys are very susceptible to root rot. So if they're sitting in really kind of soggy, wet soil all the time, they will succumb to the rot. So make sure your soil is a soil base for cacti, succulents, and citrus. You know, guys always say this, but Miracle-Gro has enough food in it to actually help the plant, and enough sand in there to also help with the drainage. So if you have your own mixture and you want to add some sand into it, I would go ahead and add builder's sand. That's a sand that they kind of rinse a little bit more, so it gets rid of all the silt and everything, and it's a little bit healthier for plants as well. But other than that, I know that they don't really need a whole lot in the way of feeding. I think the only time I really feed my guy is about in the spring, or kind of like later spring, when I see new growth coming on. I'll feed him about once in the springtime and maybe once a month after that. Fertilizer for cacti and succulents works really well for these guys, but they don't need a whole lot in the way of food either. And that's just because, like all cacti and succulents, they really do kind of thrive on neglect. I guess I should say benign neglect. I mean, you shouldn't just forget about them, but if you did for a couple of days, weeks, or a month, it would probably be just fine. Now, in northern Kentucky, in the spring and summer, we get a lot of rain. So if you do have it outside, make sure you do kind of have it like underneath an awning or something to where it's not getting water all the time if you're from a very kind of wet environment, because like I said, your plant will succumb to root rot fairly quickly too. So keep in mind, if you're getting a whole lot of rain, that you want to kind of keep it a little bit sheltered. And then pests, I know these guys suffer a lot from spider mites. Now, we've always discussed that. You can kind of tell that you've got spider mites if you see any kind of webbing or any kind of something that looks like it might be from a spider. Probably a good indication that you probably do have spider mites. It's really hard to see spider mites with the naked eye, so if you do see a lot of filaments in between leaves, I would take him out back and hose him off with the garden hose. And then after that, give it a couple of days. If you see more filaments on there, I would take some isopropyl alcohol and apply it to a washcloth and try and rub all the leaves as best you can on both sides. Now, the ponytail palm like mine has a lot of mass up here, so you would be rubbing and applying a lot of alcohol for a long time. So you may actually have to get some chemicals involved with that. But if you do, use a test area first. Now, my preferred chemical of choice would be neem oil. That is really organic. That would probably be your best bet. But remember, a little bit goes a long way, and that stuff does kind of stink. So be very cautious whenever you're applying it, and do kind of apply it pretty conservatively also. Another thing about ponytail palms that I find really interesting is how long they live. These guys can be extremely long-lived, often outliving their owners for a long time. So if you can really take care of a plant, succulent, make sure that you do kind of have a little bit of a plan for it, because it might end up outliving you. Like I said, I've had this guy for about 4 or 5 years, and I'm about 32 years old, so hopefully he won't outlive me, but you never know. But like I said, these guys are extremely long-lived. Oh, and also, the other kind of pest I was talking about was scale, and you will see that on the kind of branches in the stem, and it's just kind of a hard shell, an outer covering shell that protects the insect. It will sometimes appear kind of brownish or blackish or grayish, but you could see it on the stems. Those have to be removed by hand, if they can even be removed at all, because that hard, complex outer shell will protect the insect, and chemicals really won't be able to help you out. In some cases, I've heard people using ladybugs that may help them with that, because they're able to kind of rip them off and attack it. So scale is one of the hardest infestations that I've ever had to deal with. Hopefully you won't ever have to deal with that, but if you do, good luck. And again, once we were talking about light, I just want to remind you that these leaves will burn rather easily. So if you've gotten yours from a store where it's sat inside for a long time, make sure that you acclimate it very slowly back into the sun, because you can damage the leaves and probably damage your tree as well. Now you also may get little offsets that come off of the tree. Those can easily be removed by cutting them flush with the stem. So if your desire is to just have one kind of bottle kind of trunk, you can remove those offsets just by cutting it flush with the actual branch and using pruning shears or any kind of concave shears as well. Now, as I was saying, mine has a lot of areas that are kind of died off, so I want to show you how to go ahead and cut all that back, because pruning with these guys is very helpful. Now, you can kind of tell after I've sanitized my pruning shears that you kind of want to cut it right off to where the brown meets the green. You don't really want to cut into the green, because you can invite pests and disease into the plant, so be careful whenever you're cutting all that off. And I forgot to point out, but this is a baby ponytail palm here in the bottom in that little pot. So they do come in various shapes and sizes, and I think the only way you can propagate a ponytail palm is by seed. It is kind of hard to actually get them to germinate a little bit, but it can be done. You would do that the old-fashioned way by kind of taking the seeds and putting them in a paper towel and inside of a bag to keep holding the moisture in. But yeah, you do kind of want to place them in between some paper towels and apply water to keep it kind of moist. Now these trees are fairly slow growers, depending on what kind of conditions you have yours in. And temperature-wise also, these guys really do not like to be in freezing situations. So if you know it's going to get down below, I would say, maybe 50 degrees, I would probably take your plant inside because they can succumb to really cold temperatures. And freezing temperatures, they probably won't make it. They are a tropical plant, so they don't need to be in too cold of an area. Alright, now it looks to be about kind of where I want it to be. As I've always said, avid pruning is a good thing to do for any of your plants. The ponytail palm is a little bit unique. You don't really have to worry about branches kind of crossing, rubbing a kind of sore into another branch to where any kind of infection can kind of get in there. But it is very important to kind of prune it so that all the other leaves will get adequate sunlight from the sun. So to remove a couple of leaves and let other leaves get enough sunlight really will help the plant out. And also you're going to remove any kind of dead or dying leaves. That way the tree isn't continuously kind of feeding these leaves that are kind of half dead and draining other kind of nutrients from the plant. I told you, the cats really love this tree again. So avid pruning will really help your little ponytail palm. Well, that's really all I have to say about this plant. If you guys have any questions or concerns, be sure to leave them in a comment down there. And while you're at it, be sure to hit the subscribe button or the bell next to it. That way you'll know anytime that I've uploaded a new video. You guys take it easy, have a good one, and don't forget, always plant prudently. Thank you, YouTube.